ማይ ቪዥን ማች እምነት የሚጥሉበት የአይቲ ስልጠና ተቋም በዘርፉ ከ15 ዓመታት በላይ በተግባር የተፈተነ የሥራ ልምድ ባላቸው ምስጉን ኢትዮጵያውያን የተመሰረተ። ሙያውን መቀየር ወይም ማሻሻል ከፈለጉ ወደ ማይ ቪዥን ማች ይምጡ። በሼርፖይንት ዴቨሎፕመንት፣ በቢዝነስ ኢንተሊጀንስ፣ በዳታቤዝ አድሚኒስትሬሽን፣ በአማዞን ዌብ ሰርቪስስ፣ በአዙር ክላውድ ሰርቪስ በመረጡት ሙያ ለእርስዎ አመቺ በሆነ ሰዓት ከቤቶ በምቾት ሆነው በዝቅተኛ ክፍያ ማይ ቪዥን ማች ያሰለጥኖታል። ጥያቄ ቢኖሮ ከትምህርት ሰዓት ውጪ የአንድ ለአንድ እገዛ ያገኛሉ። እያንዳንዱን ትምህርት በተግባር ፕሮጀክት እየሰሩ ያዳብራሉ። ከዚህ በፊት ስልጠና ወስደው ከሆነና በተማሩት ሙያ ፕሮጀክት ወይም ስራ እየሰሩ በተግባር የስራ ዓለምን ማወቅና መለማመድም ከፈለጉ ለዚህ ዓላማ ብቻ ተብሎ የተዘጋጀ በአይነቱ ልዩ የሆነው የማይ ቪዥን ማች ኢንተርንሺፕ ፕሮግራማችን አለልዎ። ስልጠናውን ሲጨርሱ ሬዙሜ በማዘጋጀት እንረዳዎታለን። ኢንተርቪው እናለማምዶታለን። ለስራ ብቁና ዝግጁ እናደርጎታለን። ለበለጠ መረጃ በስልክ ቁጥራችን 202-455-6599 ይደውሉ። ማይ ቪዥን ማች የእርሶ ለእርሶ ነው።
This is a quick overview of our Intro to JavaScript class. So in previous classes that we offer, we go through and explain how to build HTML web pages with HTML and CSS. And so I have some HTML that we are starting with here as an outline. But today we're going to focus on JavaScript. And JavaScript is a scripting language that we can use to interact with our HTML web pages to give them additional functionality. For example, if you have a form on your website and your user comes to the site and fills out the form, when we click the submit button, we can use JavaScript to capture the elements that were written in the form and either display them on the page or send them somewhere else to be viewed. So it gives us a lot of JavaScript. It gives us a lot of interactivity with our websites. It's used on pretty much every website that you visit today. So what's different from the HTML class is that we use these new set of tags, and these are called script tags. So whereas outside of these script tags, say here for example, we can only write HTML, and if we run this, we will see that what we just typed shows up on our web page. If in between the script tags we write the same HTML, you can see that the color and highlighting of this code is different. This turns blue and these are not dark red. That's because everything in this area is JavaScript. So if we run it now, the website stays the same, but in this other area called the console, we are getting some errors because JavaScript does not understand the HTML that we typed. So instead of that, we can type a function called console.log, and we'll go over this in depth in the near future, but essentially what you need to know is that any text you type in here, in between these parentheses, will be printed out to the console by JavaScript. So if we run this now, it says what we typed, hello world, in the console. And notice that our very basic web page has not changed. And so in here, in between the script tags, we can do quite a lot of things with our JavaScript. Some basic things that we can explore just to get started is adding things together. And once we've worked on adding things together, we'll use the same console.log to print out the results to the console. So let's try to add two numbers together. We can say 1 + 1. So in HTML, it would not be possible outside of these script tags to add 1 plus 1. If we run it, 1 plus 1 just shows up on our web page. It does not add to 2. If we wrap this 1 plus 1 in the console.log that we talked about earlier to print it here to the console, we can print it out. It will add the numbers together and we get 2.
ማይ ቪዥን ማች እምነት የሚጥሉበት የአይቲ ስልጠና ተቋም በዘርፉ ከ15 ዓመታት በላይ በተግባር የተፈተነ የሥራ ልምድ ባላቸው ምስኩን ኢትዮጵያውያን የተመሰረተ ሙያውን መቀየር ወይም ማሻሻል ከፈለጉ ወደ ማይ ቪዥን ማች ይምጡ። በሼርፖይንት ዴቨሎፕመንት፣ በቢዝነስ ኢንተሊጀንስ፣ በዳታቤዝ አድሚኒስትሬሽን፣ በአማዞን ዌብ ሰርቪስስ፣ በአዙር ክላውድ ሰርቪስ በመረጡት ሙያ ለእርሶ አመቺ በሆነ ሰዓት ከቤቶ በምቾት ሆነው በዝቅተኛ ክፍያ ማይ ቪዥን ማች ያሰለጥኖታል። ጥያቄ ቢኖሮ ከትምህርት ሰዓት ውጪ የአንድ ለአንድ እገዛ ያገኛሉ። እያንዳንዱን ትምህርት በተግባር ፕሮጀክት እየሰሩ ያዳብራሉ። ከዚህ በፊት ስልጠና ወስደው ከሆነና በተማሩት ሙያ ፕሮጀክት ወይም ስራ እየሰሩ በተግባር የሥራ ዓለምን ማወቅና መለማመድም ከፈለጉ ለዚህ ዓላማ ብቻ ተብሎ የተዘጋጀ በአይነቱ ልዩ የሆነው የማይ ቪዥን ማች ኢንተርንሺፕ ፕሮግራማችን አለልዎ። ስልጠናውን ሲጨርሱ ሬዙሜ በማዘጋጀት እንረዳዎታለን። ኢንተርቪው እናለማምዶታለን። ለሥራ ብቁና ዝግጁ እናደርጎታለን። ለበለጠ መረጃ በስልክ ቁጥራችን 202-455-6599 ይደውሉ። ማይ ቪዥን ማች የእርሶ ለእርሶ ነው።
So you can see that JavaScript already can do quite a bit more than HTML. So let's try another thing. If we type hello world, which we typed before, in between these double quotation marks, it turns this red color, and that means that this is a string. And a string is just a string of characters. You can think of it like each letter is strung together to form a sentence or a word, and that's called a string. So, of course, we've already printed with console log hello world, but what if this time now we use the plus and we print out my name is. Now if we print this, you'll notice that the plus does not appear in the output. So what happened is we took our first string hello world and our second string my name is, and we added the two together, and the result is hello world space my name is. So just like we can add numbers 1 and 1, we can also add strings together. So this can be helpful because, for example, if you ask a user what their name is and you want to reply to them with a message, then we need to take our message. So let's say it's hello visitor to my website, and then we can say it's nice to meet you. Since every time a visitor comes to their site, it could be a different person and we don't need their name, we then use the addition that I showed earlier to add the visitor's name to the string. But first, we need to ask the visitor for their name. And so we could ask them using a text box. We could ask them using a pop-up. There's quite a few ways that you can ask a visitor for some information. But let's just say we used a text box or a form, for example. You might be familiar with forms from HTML. What you can do is you store the result of that form in a variable, and a variable is just something that you define. You can think of it as a box, and you want to store some value, some data, some information in that box so that you can move the box around and use it later. So let's say our form asks the visitor their name. Say their name was Steve. What this does is it takes the string Steve. Remember, a string is in between two double quotes, and it turns red. And it saves that string in the box, visitor name. So now we have a box, and inside the box is Steve. And we can use boxes for moving. So we're going to take this box, and we're going to move it here to our console.log statement so that we can add the visitor's name, whatever it might be, to what we print out. So let's print this, and then we get, hello visitor to my website. It's nice to meet you, Steve. And so we can see that using a combination of variables and strings and numbers, we can do dynamic things with our websites so that they can be responsive to user inputs and user actions to create interactivity. So that's a quick introduction to JavaScript. It is used often with HTML and websites. And in HTML, you can write your JavaScript in between two script tags. And in the Intro to JavaScript course, we go over strings and numbers and variables and addition, but also a lot more, like interacting with forms and to build dynamic web pages so that students in the class can use their imagination to build whatever it is that they can think of.
ማይቪዥን ማች እምነት የሚጥሉበት የአይቲ ስልጠና ተቋም በዘርፉ ከ15 ዓመታት በላይ በተግባር የተፈተነ የሥራ ልምድ ባላቸው ምስኩን ኢትዮጵያውያን የተመሰረተ ሙያውን መቀየር ወይም ማሻሻል ከፈለጉ ወደ ማይቪዥን ማች ይምጡ። በሼርፖይንት ዴቨሎፕመንት፣ በቢዝነስ ኢንተሊጀንስ፣ በዳታቤዝ አድሚኒስትሬሽን፣ በአማዞን ዌብ ሰርቪስስ፣ በአዙር ክላውድ ሰርቪስ በመረጡት ሙያ ለእርስዎ አመቺ በሆነ ሰዓት ከቤቶ በምቾት ሆነው በዝቅተኛ ክፍያ ማይቪዥን ማች ያሰለጥኖታል። ጥያቄ ቢኖሮ ከትምህርት ሰዓት ውጪ የአንድ ለአንድ እገዛ ያገኛሉ። እያንዳንዱን ትምህርት በተግባር ፕሮጀክት እየሰሩ ያዳብራሉ። ከዚህ በፊት ስልጠና ወስደው ከሆነና በተማሩት ሙያ ፕሮጀክት ወይም ስራ እየሰሩ በተግባር የሥራ ዓለምን ማወቅና መለማመድም ከፈለጉ ለዚህ ዓላማ ብቻ ተብሎ የተዘጋጀ በአይነቱ ልዩ የሆነው የማይቪዥን ማች ኢንተርንሺፕ ፕሮግራማችን አለልዎ። ስልጠናውን ሲጨርሱ ሬዙሜ በማዘጋጀት እንረዳዎታለን። ኢንተርቪው እናለማምዶታለን። ለሥራ ብቁና ዝግጁ እናደርጎታለን። ለበለጠ መረጃ በስልክ ቁጥራችን 202 455 6599 ደውሉ። ማይቪዥን ማች የእርሶ ለእርሶ ነው።